Ethan.
Wait. Hold on. Here's where you put the.
Okay.
Here's where you put the music in the actual.
We haven't
audio
started the
podcast.
Homemade Camera podcast yet.
This is where it's going to.
Oh, dang it.
Okay, and go ahead.
Okay, so Ethan, we make cameras. We make cameras out of wood. We make cameras out of plastic and metal and parts of other old cameras. This is really good audio as I move things around. We make cameras out of parts that we find. I posted on Instagram my old laser printer out on the trash can, and and one of the people wrote, and I was asking for a recommendation of a replacement printer, and one of the comments was, "Oh, for a minute there, I thought you made a camera out of that laser printer." Okay, so we have the ability to change formats. We are not limited to 24 millimeters by 36 millimeters of a standard 35 millimeter frame. We're not limited to 6x4, 6x6, 6x9, 6x12, 6x17 or 18, 6x24. We're not limited to those things. We're not limited even sub 35 millimeters. So sub miniature size. So Ethan, where do you put your cutoff for different format sizes? Do you even care? Is it just one fluid motion and anything between 20 by 24 inches and the size of an 8 millimeter video or movie frame? Where do you put your classifications?
Yeah, I mean, I would use any of that, like 8 millimeter movies. Although generally, I just shoot digital movies. When shooting film, I think half frame is really cool. I don't design anything smaller than 35 millimeter just because making big stuff, like the actual manufacturing process, is a lot easier than making small stuff, just because
what is the smallest frame size? Is it that you've made? Is it Bronco Pan? Is that the smallest frame size?
Trying to think.
I think that's the smallest of your products, but
Yeah.
what have you made?
Of my products, that's the smallest. I've made a couple like standard size 35 millimeter pinholes, and then I redrew the what was it, the Frozen Photon, the 24 millimeter square one, which was not my product. That was yours a long time ago.
Yeah. And that was 24 by 24 millimeters, so it was a square 35 millimeter frame without.
And that
showing
was
brackets.
Before you really had good printers, and I had a good deal of difficulty figuring out supports for such a tiny film gate that would be clean, and it was a tricky one. But yeah, I mean, I really kind of have stayed away from building 35 millimeter cameras product wise, because there's a lot of good 35 millimeter cameras out there. They're a lot cheaper than I can build them for. And they had multi-million-dollar factories building them. Yeah, like your
$30 post-paid, perfect, absolutely nothing.
Yeah, can't compete with that. Cosima did a great job. So, there's that, and then like on the upper end, I would say 20 by 24 is kind of the reasonable sheet of paper that I can get, or maybe a sheet of film. So
yeah, we're not Brendan Barry.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to turning a skyscraper into a camera. I think that was one of the coolest things I've seen. But I'll leave it
I
to
want to do
Brendan.
the container. The problem with the container is you'd just be taking pictures of your garage. Right? If you had a container size. Yeah, but
I'd
anyway.
need to hire some elephants to walk in front.
Yeah. Or well, I mean, we can also, if we talk about ultra large, Little Miss Sunshine, Heather's is, I don't even remember what the size is. Is it?
Yeah, Heather was not bothered by what she could get. She had tape, so it's
Yeah,
fine.
magnets. She had
Right.
magnets, but yeah,
Right.
yeah. So okay, so you're not really concerned. You don't really think of a camera being 30, miniature 35 or standard, then medium, then large, sub miniature, half frame, that type of thing. You just do you even classify them by what film or recording media they take?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it. I guess it just depends on like what I want to make or what somebody has requested that I think is a good idea to make.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I shoot a lot of different formats, right? You do too. I like building large format cameras.
Uh-huh.
They're a lot simpler, but they have their issues, like 1,000 pounds of wood in my yard type of deal. But
Yeah.
I'm not to the point like you where I'm sawing down trees and milling them into cameras.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little
Yeah.
craziness.
My
Also, we have
my
no trees here.
Yeah, my wood drying rack fell over and spilled everything. I've got to fix that.
Just got to
So
drive them
Nick,
out to Albuquerque. They'll dry in like a minute.
right? Yeah, just ship it to Albuquerque, put it in your yard, then ship it back. It's kiln dried. Um, Nick, what do you think about when you think about format divisions?
So since I usually make cameras out of old pieces of cameras, then I pretty much focus on roll film holders for most of my builds. It's just straightforward. Whatever the roll film holders format is, that's what I design the camera to work with. But that's going to shift because I'm pushing more and more towards hybrid ways of working, and I think I will be building cameras that aren't based on traditional formats at all because of some ideas I have combining digital and alternative processes and using more and more kind of stitching and just kind of breaking away from the older formats. Really what I want to do is come up with various ways to make really oversized negatives for contact printing. And I've got a whole different tracks to try out and see what works.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess I'll be getting away from I love roll film, so I'm never going to stop using those roll film holders for 120 format, just because they're so handy and I like the size, I like the films, and yeah.
Okay, so here's another question for both of you that's kind of a follow-up. What format have you found you like to design for? And when I say format, I'm talking film format. What size film / paper / digital sensor do you like designing for the most? And this is a like. This isn't a what? Most for.
So I already answered that. Essentially 6x6, 6x7, 6x9. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And 4x5. Yeah.
Yeah. Ethan, what about you?
I think I don't. I think it's a good question, but I don't have a good answer to it. I think, I've really enjoyed making a lot of different things. I loved making the Bronco Pan, and that was not a format that I ever wanted to shoot until I had it, and I loved that format. But I had somebody that I loved who loved that format and was, excited about doing that. Kind of the same deal actually for the homunculus, right? I was not. I mean, I love 6x9. I was not into that camera. I was like, Nick twisted my arm to get me to start, and then 3 days later I was in it and like totally absorbed, and I loved that, like you couldn't have stopped me for the months that it took back and forth. And
Yeah.
I would like to design some more medium format cameras. Those are backburnered. The next formats that I want to do are, large stuff for paper positives. I think this is an interesting discussion given, our surprise guest for next week, who not only designs cameras around specific formats, but around specific, alternate processes, which I'm excited to talk to our special guest about that. That I've been designing some cameras for.
Why don't we just say who it is? Is there a reason why we're saying our guest's name?
He or she decides she doesn't want to talk to us after seeing this episode?
I love that. I love the idea of what if he or she doesn't want to talk to us if she. Man, that's 50% of the population. Well, sorry, that's 49% of the population immediately.
It's my mom. So it's my mom.
So I wanted to add in that that I've been getting more and more excited about panoramic formats. Whatever, it doesn't matter what film is.
Yeah.
And the shape that I'm really liking are kind of anything between 6x12 and the kind of really long, like X-Pan shape.
Yeah.
So those are really appealing too.
The only camera right now, well, actually, there are two cameras that I have gas for. And one of them is the Sputnik, the Lomo Sputnik, which is the 6x6 lomography, old lomography, original lomography made a stereo camera. I did buy one over the holidays. It arrived from I think it was Belarus, and it was broken because you look at them wrong and they're out of adjustment. So I had to send it back. I did get fully refunded. I'm just a little bit shy of those. And the other one is it's KMZ, but Lomo also sells them, and that is the Horizon or Horizont or that series, because I can't afford a wide lux, right? Like everybody else in the world.
That is the only camera I have ever not bothered repairing and smashed on the ground in front of my shop in the parking lot. Just
a wide lux? I think that
no, not a wide lux, never.
The Horizon,
the earlier metal one that looks like it's a higher quality build than the newer plastic ones.
I'm looking at the Horizon S2, or S3.
Those are the newer plastic body ones.
Yeah, those are the newer ones.
Yeah, I think those are a little bit better, actually. Mine just tore sprockets. It never advanced properly. I took it on a trip. I came home. It had shredded all of my film, and I had it. I had smashed it and threw it in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have my old thrift store Kodak Panoram, and I think I'm just going to create my own mechanism instead of trying to restore it. And I definitely like the swing lens a lot. It's strange enough to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. So
I have some drawings of a swing lens from our episode with Hervé. I couldn't help myself after that one.
So now I would say let's start the Homemade Camera Podcast, but Ethan unfortunately already ran that role. He already ran that opening, I believe.
We could always start again.
Okay.
I just did it again. You guys want to start the Homemade Camera Podcast
and
video show?
Okay, we're back.
Yeah. So, Ethan, this is the first show we've done in a while. Why is that?
I don't know. What were we up to?
Didn't you have some rodents running around your shop that you had to put in a box and mail off to people
Yeah, I was
who supported your Kickstarter?
I was very busy getting those out. I think if we built this camera, we have all of the extras over there, but I shipped almost 100 of those so far, and
Okay.
yeah, I'm done with that. I think
I wonder what is
people
it?
who haven't filled out their surveys, and I have their units over here. But
Yeah, what is that? The prairie dog?
the
The
gopher,
gopher? The
Yeah,
gopher?
the gopher film scanner.
The chipmunk?
No, it's
yeah.
the mongoose was
Mongoose.
my last product.
Did I ever mention, Nick, you're old enough, Ethan, you are not. In the 1970s, particularly on ABC's Saturday afternoon sports programming, like The Wide World of Sports, one of the things that they covered more heavily than I've seen in the past or seen since is drag racing. Do you remember, people like Big Daddy Don Garlitz? You remember that, Nick?
I never had a television in the 70s, so no. I missed all television until the late 80s, mid 80s.
Okay, so
I didn't have eyes.
There was a drag
ears
racer.
Were more relevant.
Yeah, there was a drag racer in the 1970s, and I don't remember who it was, but his nickname was the Snake, or his car's nickname was the Snake. And this other guy came and trolled him because his car's nickname was the Mongoose. And they, they were like number one, number two, and they just fought all the so which, is appropriate as the Mongoose eats snakes and snakes of film, right? There we go. Okay.
So my parents used to go to drag races in Louisiana in the 1950s. That involved, a lot of rubber getting turned to smoke, and people in the stands, one of the things they would yell is "Great smoking gumballs."
Okay, thank you for that time traveling little thing. So Ethan, what have you been up to lately? What have you been up to?
Well, I finished the Mongoose. I took like a week off. I went hiking. I read a book. I took 2-day naps. It was very nice. And then, I had been thinking about getting into some other projects, which I've told you guys about, and some things that I've talked about on the podcast, like, ultra large self-developing cameras. And sort of about a week later, I started ordering prototype parts. I bought $147.53 worth of bolts on Amazon the other day, and O-rings. But, about 2 weeks after I shipped the first batch of Mongoose, I get an email from a customer, and he says, excuse me, this is great. I love it. Now make me one for mounted slides. And I said, look, if I'm going to prototype a mounted slide holder, excuse me, the physical mechanism to change the slides, I'm going to charge you $5,000 or $10,000 at least, and it's going to be bad in comparison to something like a Kodak slide projector, which they made by the millions that work perfectly. They're like die cast, and they're $80 on eBay. So I'll tell you what I'll do. So I'll take it back. I have a family friend. I've probably talked about him a little bit on the podcast before. Mike, who went to high school with my dad, they were in the photo club together, and then he married my mom's best friend. And so he's kind of like my uncle. His kids are like my cousins, and he was a professional photographer for his entire adult life. He just retired like last year or a year or two ago, and he called me about a year and a half ago, pre-Mongoose, and I didn't like put these things together. And he said, I'm retiring. The kids are out of the house. Like I kind of want to get rid of some of this stuff. And he had like 10 filing cabinets filled with full Kodak carousels. Like he archived his slides and carousels. Like put them in a damn binder; they'll compress down to one drawer. But anyway, he said his solution was to pull the lens off a projector, take his Nikon D something or other with a macro lens, point it into the projector at the film gate, and then he had a remote trigger for the Nikon and a remote trigger for the projector, and he would like boop the projector and then boop the camera and like just alternate through 140 times or 80 times depending upon the size of the carousel. And he had, pretty good results, but he was getting pretty tired of this and had given up on it. He calls me like a year and a half ago. He says, "Ethan, can you make me a trigger that just like triggers one and then triggers the other? It'll be simple. Just do it." And I said, "Sure."
Right. He was using way too much processing power for that process. Yeah.
Yes. He was using his whole body. And so I said, "Okay, give me a week or two." And he said, "Well, like I'm kind of busy doing other things. I like to swim now. Like, this was pre-pandemic and the closing of the pool." And so he said, like, maybe like I'll let you know when I'm back to thinking about scanning slides. And so I just sort of put it in the back of my head and forgot about it until I got this email from my very satisfied Mongoose customer who said I would like one that advances slides. And, this light sort of went off like, okay, here's two people that want this. Plus, my actual uncle has all of my grandpa's slides from 1940 something to 1993 or 94, tens of thousands, I'm sure. And so I emailed him back. I said, "Look, I could charge you $10,000 and make a terrible slide advancing machine, and it's going to take me months, and it'll be made out of plastic, which would be fine. But why don't you just buy a Kodak slide projector on eBay for $80 with shipping, or you probably have 5 of them if you have enough slides to make this request," which he did, by the way. "And I'll make you a trigger, right? You set up the camera on a tripod with a macro lens. You set up the projector, and the trigger will trigger one, wait, trigger the other, and wait." And said, "Great." And I said, "I don't know that this is a product." This was a couple of weeks back. Like, would you I'll do a custom job for you. And I thought, the job would take like a little less than a week. And I thought, okay, I won't charge you for a week's worth of work. I'll charge you for like a half a day's worth of work. But like, still, I gave him a price, and he was like, too much. Which, no offense taken, right? Like, he was valuing the product, and I was valuing my time. I don't think he was saying Ethan needs to work for $35 a day, but I think when he was looking at the thing, like, people don't really understand when you build a one-off machine, they're wildly expensive, even at a 80% discount. And so I said, okay, no offense taken, but I can't do that. I can't work for a week for free to make one machine. But tell you what, I'll see if anybody else wants them. Right? I don't know. I know 2 people in my life who would want such a thing. They'd probably pay a few $100s for it, but it might not be worth it. And, like, I'm always up against this sort of crazy idea. I want to do it, but it eats a week or a month or 3 months or 6 months worth of time. Am I going to be able to move on to a next product, or am I going to be homeless for doing it? And so I put this post on Instagram, and I said, like, who would spend $300, which was like what he quoted me. He said, "I would be willing to pay $300. Who would spend $300 on a device that can scan slides, mounted slides, one every 2 seconds about, and you have to bring your own camera, macro lens, and projector?" And like, within an hour, I had like 15 people say, "Yes, I'll take one. Where do I send the money?"
Yeah, I understand that, because right off the top of my head, I can name probably 4 people who need this.
Yeah. And so I said, like, okay, I will try and let me see what I could do. And I had learned a lot of things from the Mongoose. There was some R&D there. I still have 150 pounds of leftover parts for the Mongoose, preventing me from getting to my digital camera lenses and prototypes cabinet. And so I sat down, and like in 2 days, I had a working prototype. That was a mess of wires on my desk, and like because this thing has no mechanical parts that move, and because it has no sensors, it was a very simple type of thing to make. But then I had some boards made in China, and then I tested a few different parts. I made a couple of different housings and laser cut frames for it. So I blew through way more than the $300 offered for the product just to make the first one, right? Because, like, I bought some fancy LED light bulbs, and you can only buy them in huge packs. And so, like, it just didn't make sense for one. But I at this point knew that I'd sell at least 10 of them. And so I made this thing. It's I've been calling it the Boop Boop trigger. Oh yeah.
Is that based on the Mongoose controller? I mean, is it just a different firmware from the Mongoose?
It's actually a different control box entirely from the Mongoose. It shares a lot of the things that I learned, but this is a from scratch thing. So the Mongoose has a bunch of ports to do a lot of other things. There's about like 7 secret modules that I have not released for it. But this was just easier for me to like strip it down. This is maybe 500-600 lines of code. The Mongoose has 7,000. And it allowed me to add some different hardware. So the Mongoose doesn't have all of the hardware necessary for this. And I learned some things and made some improvements. So like this box, is 3D printed. It has some much sturdier ports. It shares the LCD screen and the buttons and the knob controller and sort of the look of the Mongoose, but it's got a new control board inside. It's got some different modules in there to do what it does. But yeah, it just sort of philosophically takes from the Mongoose.
Okay. So when I was trying to imagine making this device, what I thought of was an adjustable mechanical metronome and 2 switches.
Yep.
Does this do more?
Nope. It does not. I mean, so there would be problems with the adjustable mechanical metronome. That would be 100. You are absolutely correct. And this has. I thought about, like, could you use a Graylab timer to do this? Or a set of Graylab timers. And the answer is like, yeah, but like you would be constantly pushing them down. It would be no easier than just pressing the 2 cable releases. But it would be funny.
Yeah.
The big issue is, so there are 4 times that this thing respects in a cycle. And so you would think, like, you trigger the camera, you wait for the camera to take its picture, you trigger the projector, you wait for the projector to drop a slide in, and then you just repeat over and over. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's, like the Mongoose, there's a triggering interval, which is basically how long the contacts are closed, which is analogous to how long you hold the button on your camera or the shutter release or the projector button, which is not how long it takes to advance. It's just how long does it take to trigger that thing. And like to get maximum efficiency, you want that interval to be as short as possible, right? You just want to touch the button and move on. But if you touch too fast, this is the projector, at least, is 1990s at best technology. And so it takes a little longer, right? About 16 milliseconds to trigger a projector. So there are those 2 intervals and then the waits between them. And then I got a little fancier on this one, like while it's doing its job, it says working ... And then while it's ready, it says ready. And I gave it a a frame counter. So as you take pictures, it says frame 1, frame 2, frame 3, just like the Mongoose.
Nice.
And you can pause it and restart it, and you can reset
and when it
that number.
runs out of slides, it doesn't just keep going and going.
Right. So when you get to so you set one of the settings is like, so you set those 4 times, and then you set the maximum number of slides and whether the beep is on or off. And so when it gets to the maximum number of slides, it just goes beep, 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 and then stops. Although you can set from 1 to 200 slides. 1 to 199, it'll stop at the number. If you set it to 200, it's like the secret infinity mode, right, where it'll just go like for a year and it'll never stop basically until your power shuts down. And the reason I did that is because I, you know, my my friend Mike has everything in carousels already, which is insane to me. It's like he's paying New York City property taxes on hundreds of carousels that could be compressed into a binder. But I don't want to sit there and load a carousel. Like the whole thing is like, this device is an easy button, and so I spent $27 on eBay, and I got a stack loader for a Kodak carousel, which are super plentiful. I had never seen one in person before. I don't know why. And it just allows you to put a stack of slides in. It'll advance through them. It won't reverse for like slideshows, but um, you know, it was like brand new. There's a ton of them on eBay. And I thought, okay, if you're doing like an archive, like my grandpa's archive, and you're taking them out of pages or boxes, you just put a stack in, tell it to go. And like, if there's somebody there watching it, you could just set it to 200 and it'll go all day. And like, when it's down to 2 slides in the loader, you just put the next 100 in and cycle through. And you could just basically run this thing all day, taking a picture every 2 seconds. I calculated like in a work day, you could do something like 15,000 slides.
So I have a question that goes with this. I have an old Kodak carousel projector that I like. Used it for many, many years, but the bulbs are extremely expensive, relatively short-lived. I imagine you can still buy them, but what I'm curious about is, since you're not trying to project across a room, you don't need as much intensity. Could you replace that with an LED or something like that?
Yes, that's a great question. And leading, maybe you saw my video that I have not released yet, but so there's a couple of things. When this customer requested this thing, I said, look, I'll make you a system $15,000. Like, not seriously that I would do this, although if he paid me, I'd do it. I didn't think he would spend $15,000. He could just send his slides to get digitized by somebody else, pay a kid and an Epson. But to make it $300, he had to meet me part of the way, which was buy his own projector and camera and lens and do the setup. So there are a couple of things that the user must do and a couple of things that the user can do to make the setup, right? So I'm just selling a trigger. I'm not selling a scanner, right? This is just a piece of a setup. It's a good piece. It's clever. It's useful. It's expensive for what it is, but very cheap for what it does. And so the first thing that you have to do is either take the remote and cut it and then splice in. I send like a pigtail connector for this XT60 plug that triggers the projector. And so, there's 2 pins in the projector wire that if you connect them, it'll advance a slide. And so you take those 2 pins and you twist them up with the 2 wires I give you, and then it plugs right into the trigger. Or you could get fancy like I did. I took the screws out of the trigger and I just soldered 2 more cables on. So, the remote is still fine and it just has a little plug that comes out of the back of it. Excuse me. And you plug that into the trigger. So that's the first thing that you have to do. Next thing that you have to do is, or that you can do, right? So this, to get back to your question, is like a whole roundabout thing. You can just use a projector as is with a halogen bulb, but we all know those halogen bulbs are not necessarily the highest CRI, which is basically like the black body radiation curve determines what spectrum of light you can see, and so they might not have, 1, the best color fidelity, 2, they're super bright, right? So you'd probably have to use an ND filter even at f/22 if your camera doesn't go down to a low ISO, and that's less of a problem. That's more brightness is good in photography, but also they're super hot. And so when you open up a projector's lamp housing, it has a couple of things in it. Usually it's got a halogen bulb, sometimes a mirror, depending upon how they're oriented, And then it has a condenser, but before the condenser lens, it has a heat shield so that the bulb doesn't crack the damn condenser. And like, if you leave a slide in a projector too long, we all know it will melt or burn up. And even the heat from the lens will sort of heat up the slide, and it'll sort of pop or sort of change its curvature right from flat.
Right, going out of focus too. Yeah.
Yeah, and so all of those things are workable and usable with a standard halogen bulb, but you can make it much better with a little bit of modification. And so I'm going to sell like little kits for people who want them, or people can do their own job. You know, I'm not going to make it a bundle because people will be bringing different projectors to this. But what I did was I pulled the halogen bulb out. I pulled the condenser lens out. The condenser lens you can use, but it requires that your camera is perfectly aligned. If you're off a little bit, which you don't want to be because it'll skew the picture and the focus, but even just a hair, then you don't have even illumination because of that condenser lens sending almost parallel light through the slide. So I pulled the condenser lens out and I pulled the heat shield out. I didn't need it. And then I just got a little 95 plus CRI LED lamp, which was a very expensive lamp, and I had to buy a whole ton of them because you can't just buy one. Or I didn't know where to buy one. And so it has really good spectrum. It's very bright. It's 5,000 degrees K, so daylight balanced, and it puts out full spectrum and makes beautiful color. So I got this thing. It's in a halogen form factor, so it's very small, and I just stuck it in where the old halogen bulb went, and it didn't mount to the socket. So I got a socket, and I just stuck the pigtails into where the halogen went. And then I laser cut some white acrylic as a diffuser, just the same stuff that you would have on the front of a light box. Almost every light box has it. And I put that in the place of the condenser and the heat shield. And all of these things just are meant to be replaced. So you open a clip and then you pull them out. There's no tinkering around. And so I think I'll probably wind up selling a bunch of custom sets of you send me a diameter of your condenser and heat shield, and I will send you a cut piece of white acrylic, just a disc or a square, whatever your projector takes, and then a LED bulb and a socket, and then to make it cheap, right? The customer is not going to send me their projector and have me do it. Like, I'll do it, but I'm going to charge you thousands of dollars to do it, right? I'm not going to figure that part out for every individual person. It'd take too much time. But it would take you, 20, 30 minutes first time around, and 5 the second. Not that you have to do it multiple times to swap that bulb. And you could swap it with anything, or again, just sort of use it as is, or, for a very reasonable price, I will sell a one-off LED bulb, set of pigtail sockets, and some custom acrylic, or I'll meet people halfway, however they need to set it up. But yeah, it's much dimmer. You can't really project with a diffuser and a dimmer bulb, but because you're just looking straight at the slide, you basically turn the lamp housing into a light box.
So I'm thinking that if you mount your regular film, your color print film, in slide mounts, this could be a mongoose killer.
Yeah, but I mean, sure, for anybody who wants to do that, go ahead. I haven't mounted. This is part of the reason why I didn't think it was a product initially, is I haven't mounted slides. I've shot slides for the last 25 years. I haven't mounted them in 20, because at some point, I had my own darkroom and I was making ILFA chrome prints or sending them out and getting Cibachrome prints. And, I mean, they make negative carriers for slides, but I didn't have one. And a negative carrier for a strip is much better. And so I just stopped mounting them. Plus, I was shooting like 120 slides, and I never mounted those. I never owned a projector for those. And so eventually I went to scanning on a flatbed, and then, with the Nikon macro bellows, and then later on with the Mongoose. And all of those demanded strips. And so the only slides that I had here, my uncle has my grandpa's collection, were slides that I hand mounted with my mom's clothing iron when I was 13 years old and developed in my bathtub with a thermometer trying to keep it at about 100 degrees. And the first batch that I found, half of the damn little cut pieces of film like fell down within the cardboard slide where the glue had dried up, and I didn't do a good job. And it took me a while to scavenge enough slides from my personal collection of mounted slides that were actually not falling apart. So I don't recommend people cut up all of their negatives into individual negatives and mount them in slides. That's a miserable process.
I've thought of another use for this converted projector with the cool LED light in it. You could use it as a way to digitally project old slides directly. So you could set your digital camera on to shoot video, drop the slide, look at it on TV for a while, and then drop the next slide, look at it on TV for a while.
or you could use this trigger to actually capture them and then project them on an LCD projector or TV.
Not yet, but it could become a slide sorter essentially. It could.
Yeah, I guess that's not the craziest idea. It's not how I intended the thing to be used, but sure. I think so part of the deal with this one is like I'm not going to run a Kickstarter. I'm going to for the time being, I'm still unconvinced that there's a demand for them, and so I'm going to sell like a small batch of prototypes. Just people can send me an email or a direct message on Instagram, and I will sell them one-offs. And once that batch is done, like if it sells out quick, I'll then run a Kickstarter or something and make a huge batch of them. But I'm wary of getting into that. But one of the stipulations is that if you buy one, I will only sell it in the prototype batch. Production prototype, it's working and robust, but I will only sell it if you make me an Instagram video of your personal setup, which I'll then probably use for Kickstarter advertising. But part of this is I want to see how people set them up, and people are going to have new and different ideas of what the hell to do with this thing beyond what I thought of, and I will then transfer that into my own advertising.
I think Nick has something to say.
So here's my setup already. So I'll tether the camera, and as long as you have a pause button on that thing.
I do. Because
I don't want to save all my horrible old slides. I only want some of them. So if the camera's tethered, you can see the slide as you're working fairly well and decide if you're going to keep it or not.
Nick, scan them all and then right-click, send to trash. Right-click, send to trash.
Yes.
No.
Yes, it's way faster.
That is
Nick, how
so
long
much.
does it take you to make the decision, right? Get a stack feeder. It's $27 shipped, like in brand new condition. You digitize them all, and then
I will guarantee
it's so much easier on a computer.
If you set the first batch to run, and you say it's 30 slides.
No, it's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
No, I'm saying the first batch, the first carousel, 30 slides. You take that carousel off, or you take that stack off, you run the next 30 slides. You'll be 5 batches in before you're done with that first set of slides, figuring out which ones to throw out.
Yes.
Yeah. You have a brand new computer. You are flush with hard drive space.
Maybe this moves us on to the next segment, but Nick just bought a new camera that's going to fill hard drives like crazy.
Uh-huh.
He can't afford the hard drives now.
Now, what's the format of this camera, Nick?
It's the cheapest medium format digital camera available right now, and it went on sale.
Medium format in a digital camera?
It's basically a full frame sensor that's a little taller than normal, so that you get a 4:3 aspect ratio instead of a 2:3.
So it's just full frame.
No, it's taller, so it's a different shape. I'm
gonna bust your chops on this.
That's right. That's how you express.
You could have just gotten two Sony 7R and stacked them right on top of each other, or glued them together
for six times the cost and a lot of pain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Exactly. So, you want to talk about that at all, or you want to just pass by it until you have something really to say about it?
No, I don't have a lot to say about it. It's part of a plan of what I'm going to do next. So maybe if we talk about that later, it'll come into it.
Okay, that sounds good. We lost Ethan for a moment, but Ethan wanted me to turn my camera to color for our next little bit. I'm going to talk about something that I have been doing. I'm assuming because Ethan ran off, he is done. But we have this camera, and some of you may have already seen it. So I have to do my little bit of music. So don't. Oh
no.
Don't. Okay, so this is the Star Destroyer. The Star Destroyer is a wood camera that is still in prototype. I mean, these are the hinges, so.
So is that name a Star Destroyer? Is that a reference to some paparazzi? Activity?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Right.
It's called Star Wars. That is the first time the first scene. Okay.
All right,
So
Graham, I'm going to play
called it-
Graham for a second here. Describe what we're looking at.
Oh yeah. Okay. So what this is it is a camera that is triangular in profile. If you look from the top or the bottom, it's triangular. You look from the side, it's just a normal rectangular shape. On the end is a little bit of an extender helical mount, because I built this out of wood and I didn't know exactly what my dimensions were going to be. I'll show you guys that in a second. So I have a 3D printed little lens mount thing at the front. Then I have a helical, and it is one of those long throw helicals. And at the end, I have a Fuji 210 camera that'll almost exactly. Oh, Nick, you're muted. You just said something, but you're muted.
Yeah, you have a lens and a shutter mounted on your camera.
Yeah, lens and a shutter. Good. Thanks for mentioning that. It is just basically a triangle, because that is the shape, and this is, it houses a film advance and a film and it just fell all over the place as I opened the back. But that film gate is 6x17, so it is a 6x17 camera.
Is that a 3D printed film gate?
Yeah, the film gate and the film advance, and I'm not getting the light right for you guys to see the film advance. But the film advance, this is very similar to the film advance that you would get on a Kraken. So I just 3D printed that. And the reason why I didn't know what the flange distance to the film gate distance is I wasn't sure exactly where this was going to be placed, because the back door is the pressure plate. Well, actually, the back door pushes in the pressure plate, and this is this sits across the back, and this for those of you who are just listening, this is a rectangular piece of 3D printed plastic with a window to see a 120 film numbering.
And by window, you mean hole.
A hole, yeah. It's the normal, ruby window.
But it's not just rectangular, right? It has some clever notches on there.
Yeah, it has some notches, and there are some corresponding notches on the actual film gate so that it doesn't move horizontally within the space. But this is the big technology that I have added, and I'm about to show it, and
I
that
love this
is 3D printed springs. Okay, so these 3D printed springs are, there are two parts. There's a holder that keeps them in place, but this is just normal PLA that's printed thinly, and you just press down and it springs back. So when the back is put on it, and you have to, yeah, okay. So I have a little light.
So that's what's known as a pressure plate you've created.
So it's a pressure plate. So when the back is closed on it, it presses down on the film and creates a flat film plane. So
I got to stop you and say, like, I love this camera. I think it is beautiful, but I am really, really impressed that you 3D printed leaf springs. Really good.
Okay, so let me tell you a second about this. So I need to tilt my camera down to show my T-shirt. So what is my T-shirt? It's the 20th Century Camera T-shirt, and that is because the idea for this came from a 20th Century Camera 4x5 spiral film development reel. Okay,
you better be careful. Jeff's got a patent on those reels.
Well, that's fine. That's good. I'm not doing, but what I noticed about them was there was flexibility, and it didn't feel brittle at all. So that is the inspiration. So Jeff, thank you very much. Jeff Perry, 20th Century Camera. So then I thought, well, why can't I do that with mine, with this? So this is the technology part of it. The non-technology part of it is I made it out of wood. This wood is hickory. The back is actually maple ply because I ran out of hickory.
So back in my day, my day, machining wood was considered technology. But go on.
Yeah. Okay, so this is an older technology, and this is 1/4 inch by 3 inch hickory. So a 1/4 inch is 3 millimeters. That's not right. 1/4 inch is 6 millimeters. An 1/8 of an inch is 3 millimeters. So that's how thick this wood is. And I bought a pack on Etsy of this wood, and it was really, it was pretty expensive. I think it cost me $40 for, like, this is the size of a plank.
It's lovely though.
Yeah, and it takes the stain well, although I did not do a great job of sanding on that side. So I'm gonna talk about this really. I'm gonna finish this up pretty quickly, but let me. I'll show you. I'll put it in. So this. I've got it backwards. Okay. So the film plate sits in against the film gate, and let me look at it. Okay. And then it has some notches so it doesn't move back and forth.
There's little teeth projecting out that go through the notches in the plate. Yeah,
they're just guides. And then this goes down. That is my light seal. I have a strip foam like you would put in like on a screen door or something.
So that's your adjustable light leak there.
Yeah, well, let me show you something. So this is 6x17. You get 4 shots on a 120 roll. And I'm going to share my screen right now. So I'm going to present. I think I'll do a window here. There it is. And this is, as soon as it loads, confirm that you guys see my screen share.
Hang on. I have to pin your screen share.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Come on. Get on. Okay. There we go. So, you can take us off of it, but Now this is, I took 4 shots. I've shot 1 roll. Do you guys note? Okay, it's coming back. Do you guys notice the light leaks on this?
No, I do not.
No.
Neither do I, because this is the first camera I have ever made where I shot the first roll and there were no light leaks.
Very nice.
Oh, actually, I'm patting myself on the back, and then I'm going to grab the monkey and throw the monkey off my back. So,
Very nice.
so yeah, I'm gonna.
So that's the name of this camera then, the Monkey Free.
The monkey. No, the name of this camera is the Star Destroyer because. Wow. Okay. Because
it destroys stars.
Appears to be like the Star Destroyer from Star Wars. The Star Destroyer is the big Imperial ship that like Darth Vader's riding on. It's not the Death Star. It's the big triangular ship is what it is. So that's one project. It is not complete. I mean, I have to figure out a hinge system because right now it's just held together by tape. So it's in development.
Actually, instead of a hinge, maybe just a couple little elastic loops that go over a peg, something like that.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, that's probably what I'm going to do. Just get stretchy paracord or whatever. Here's something that I want to show you guys about the balance. Now, this is a visual, but that is pretty close to the center of gravity.
So for those listening, as most people will listen to this as a podcast, Graham's got his fingers right by the tripod socket, which is way up at the front of the triangle by the lens. I assume that lens and helix weighs as much as the whole camera.
Yeah, about that. So that's something that I was pretty happy that turned out.
Actually, it's kind of handy that it's where it is because you're really close to the lens. So in the very unlikely event that you wanted to spin this camera between shots to create, I don't know, 180-degree view or something, it's near the pivot point where it should be.
Right, absolutely. So there would be some slight adjustments, but not a ton. So should I just go through the rest of mine, or okay? So I've got quite a few projects. Okay, so here I'm gonna. What the hell? I'll leave myself in color. But the I wanted to buy a new car, so I sold 2 packs of FP100C. But I divested myself of all of my Fuji instant film. It wasn't quite enough to buy a car, but that means that I still have my Polaroid 450 Polaroid land camera. Come on, there we go. Which is, it's really a tremendous camera. So I ground off, here's the hinge pin. So I ground off the hinge pin, and I don't know what I'm going to put in here, but I'm going to put some sort of roll film. I'm toying with 35 millimeter and converting that into a 35 millimeter.
Like a half frame camera?
Yeah, like a half frame camera. But it's going to be a wide half frame.
Uh-huh.
Exactly. I have what's my motto about fidelity? Ethan, what's my motto about fidelity?
As highest quality possible is the only thing that will please Graham.
Yeah. It's called Down the Fidelity Curve is my little motto. So I have started a new Instagram called Down the Fidelity Curve. It's an Instagram account, and it is all about low resolution. Well, actually, here let me say it is not low resolution. It is non-objective or low objective. And I'm going to again present a screen here. This is some of the examples of the work. Now, those of you who are on the who are listening on audio, you can check this out. My Instagram feed is down the fidelity curve for this. So this is an example of some work.
Way down.
Way down. And here's another, and I'm going to show you guys the lens that I use to take this with. This has the bubbliest, this has bokeh that is somewhat like the dandelion when it's in its seed state. So that's kind of that bokeh. So, here's another example of this, and there's another example of that, and it all just
so for the people
away.
listening at home, we are looking at a lot of Graham, describe.
Okay,
so it's like 3 a.m. on New Year's Day, and the revelry is going straight to hangover.
Okay, yeah, and you can't focus on anything. Okay, so what this is the lens. Now most of this is a Fuji to M45 adapter, then an M42, not M45, and it is a 25 to 55 adapter. It appears that my JPEG viewer quit in the middle of that presentation, which is a little bit odd. And then there's a lens sitting on the end of it. Okay, so it is a part of, and I'm going to now switch out my lens that I'm using to present myself, and this is the lens. Now it's a little bit, I'm swapping out a 25 millimeter lens for a lens that is, I think it's about 65 millimeters. And I think it is 65 millimeters at about f2, 2.5, something like that. So it is very soft. Now it is a single element, and it is a double convex element. Now, the double convex element came from an uncemented achromat pair. So an achromat pair is a positive meniscus, which is a lens that has a convex side and a concave side. And then that matches, and the radius of the concave side matches a double convex element. Those two cement together to make an achromat pair. Well, I took the double convex version out of that, and it's a 135. I think it's a 135 millimeter pair, and the double convex comes out to be about a 65 millimeter element. So it's very dreamy. I think that this would have fit the negative positives cheesy 70s filter contest that nobody entered, and I didn't develop the lens until the contest was over. So and it's not really a filter, but it really gives you that effect. So that's something that I've been working on. Let me put my regular lens back on my Fuji camera.
Even on this blurry little screen I'm looking at right now, that lens looks pretty good. I like what you're doing.
Yeah. So with my okay, that's fine. That's fine, because you're all obsessed.
I'm into the Star Destroyer. I want more of that camera. That camera. Yeah. Great.
Okay. So part of the deal is that Ethan, you want to go up the fidelity curve. You're so trapped in the trappings of commercialism and technology, whereas I'm more spiritual. Okay, just I wanted to get that out of there. Okay, so that's one project. Here's another project. This is of course an early prototype Kraken 612 body. This is a lens cone. Now I want you to look at the size of this lens cone versus the Kraken 612. What do you guys notice about that for the people who are at home?
So it looks like Graham's holding up a 612 camera with a short little nose cone already mounted for very short thing, and then he's holding up another nose cone that looks kind of like the Star Destroyer to me, which is ginormous, semi-rounded side triangle. Is that?
Yeah. What do you notice about the how wide that aspect ratio is?
Pretty wide.
Yeah, it looks like 17 centimeters or something like that.
Okay, so one of the reasons why the Kraken 612 was a 6x12 centimeter camera is because that's as big of a body as I can print on my Ender 3. Now, there's a guy named Sean, and I'm not going to identify him anymore until he is ready to be outed as the person who has taken the Kraken 612 and modified it to be the Kraken 617. So a lot of people asked for a 6x17 body for the Kraken, 6x17 version of the Kraken. It just won't fit on my printer. I can't prototype it. But Sean has a bigger printer, and he is doing that right now. Now, I have one that should be delivered to my house today, the body. I printed a lens cone. I can print a lens cone. I printed a lens cone. Now I'm going to put that together, and there should be a Kraken 617 available. The Kraken 617 is now one of the things that I want to do is I want to gauge whether there are people who are interested in a 6x17 version of the Kraken. Either as a set of files, you have to have a big volume, a big print plate, so it won't. And I can get those get that information. So either as a printed, assembled body, or as a set of files. I'm just gauging. So that is something that is coming along, and I'm kind of excited about that.
I like the aspect ratio better when it's a little bit wider. It just pushes you over the brink into really having to compose differently.
I'm excited to try it out. I really am excited to try it out, and I'm very excited that he wanted to take that ball and run with it. I can't express how much I'm really excited about that. I will also say that the Kraken project, I kind of burned down on it. Like, I didn't want to continue to develop it, even though I've made a 645 and a 6x6 and a 6x9 version. And what I really wanted to do was a flexible body that you could readjust. You'd have to have dedicated nose cones for each.
Sorry, flexible, you mean adjustable, not like at a TV where you can bend it like some sort of Nick Lyle accordion.
A flexible system.
I see.
Not an actual flexible body. But speaking of flexible bodies, look at this.
Oh, wow. What's that?
Okay. So this is a leather bellows for a Kodak folder. And I'm going to, that's a 6x9 aspect ratio. It stretches out to maybe 15 centimeters. This is a bellows from a folder, and then I'm going to show you guys this.
What are you holding
on
up there?
eBay.
I can see the video, and I have no idea what that bag is.
Okay, so that bag is nothing but, I think it's 17. Did I get 17? Did I get 13? 13 replacement bellows that have never been used. Okay.
Or are they the same size or they're smaller?
No, they're multiple different sizes. Like this looks to me like this is a 35 millimeter size. You know, and here's and I've got multiples of each size. I just bought them as a lark. I mean, here's a couple more of the 6x9s. And I ended up paying about $4.50 per when I bought them all together. Like this is I don't know. That looks to me like a 127 size. If that's a 6x9.
Okay. So you got a Ziploc baggie, like a gallon baggie full of different odd-sized replacement bellows for folding cameras.
For projects for me. So here, let me tell you.
So that's the beginning of the story. That's not the end of the story. Like what is?
Oh no, that's the
what
beginning of the story because that's all I've done. I haven't done anything with them. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 bellows, and I think I paid $65 shipped. So yeah, $5 a piece.
Okay, but what are they going to become, Graham?
Who knows? I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Okay, so here's something else. No, Surplus Shed sent me an email that they were running a sale on a bunch of surplus achromats. So I bought a bunch of those, everything from 25 millimeter focal length by an 8 millimeter diameter. Okay. And I checked that covers full frame. I don't know what I'm making out of these things. So that's pretty much it. It's been a while. Here, one more thing I want to mention, and this is for anybody to get a hold of me, Graham at Homemade Camera. I have switched over fully to 35 millimeter digital camera digitation. I have a new printer. My printer died. And so I bought an all-in-one for document scanning because I will tell you my Epson V700 is overkill for scanning, my performance review that I've signed that I've got to send back. It's overkill for that. So if anybody needs an Epson V700, Graham at Homemade Camera, we can talk about it. We can talk about price. We can figure all that type of stuff out. So I have that to sell. I think that is pretty much everything that I have as a current project. It's been a while since we've
that looks really great. I'm really thrilled by that huge pack of bellows. I love that kind of thing.
Yeah,
those look super useful. And I'm imagining you have so many. You should maybe make something with extra eyes on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just got the notification that the battery on my camera is dying, so I'm going to replace it right now. So I'll be off camera for just a moment.
I mean, Graham could do the thing where you make a hoop of 120 film and have lenses pointing out in all directions. Instead of having film
or
advance,
pointing in.
You just fire one camera after the other until the whole roll is done.
Right, exactly.
You could wear it around your waist with straps over your shoulders, like those old barrel guys.
Yeah. or it could be like the
Poor Ethan, he's suffering.
or it could be a full 100-foot bulk roll of I don't know, slide film.
Or you could have a bandolier of cameras with a 4x5 plate behind each one, and just keep sliding it around.
I'm telling you, the next time I see somebody with a camera made out of a Good Humor bicycle, I'm going to come with a bandolier.
There you go.
Okay. So I've got a lot of irons in the fire, and I'm not sure what any of those things. I think I talked about all of the things that I had. Oh no! One more thing. I'm holding up for those people at home an iris, and of course, an iris is both a flower and a technical part of the camera. We talk about the aperture. The aperture is controlled by an iris. Bought
is that
this.
A microscope iris?
Say it again.
That looks like a microscope iris to me.
It could be. I don't know. It was available on AliExpress. Maximum diameter is 35 millimeters, and its minimum diameter is about 2 millimeters. So with a lens like this, I just have to mate these two things together, and suddenly I don't have Waterhouse stops. I have adjustable actual stop, adjustable apertures. So that to me is really good. I think it cost me, it wasn't super cheap. I think it cost me about $30 shipped from China with a weight of, probably a 5.
So is that brand new?
Brand new. So we talked to, I think Freeman Lynn, Watch Me Make on Instagram, was talking about these at some point. He's the one I remember talking about Chinese apertures. Chinese apertures.
I don't have all that much to report, but I do have to go to work today. So I might do a quick rundown of what I'm hoping to work on next, if that's okay, Ethan.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm trying to focus. So the last 3 years, I've been just trying out a million different cameras, trying to learn more about them. And people have been giving me, all their old cameras out of the closets, and I've been picking stuff up in the flea markets, and it got a little out of hand, and I've got just way too many of them now. So I decided I needed to decide which things to work on. And one way to finance that is to sell off a whole lot of cameras. So there's a big load going on eBay over the next week or so. And the upshot of it is I'm able to start on the next phase of digital photography that I want to do. So I bought a fancy camera.
Nick, what's your eBay username? So first of all, I can go look.
I actually can't remember the whole thing. I'll look it up later. It's a silly thing I came up with a long time ago. But I'll look it up.
Okay, look at the YouTube comments. We'll try to get it in there and in the show notes on on the podcast.
Okay, so but the point is, I've decided I want to focus on a bunch of camera builds and camera restoration projects that I have built up, but the goal is I'm more and more thinking that I want to move towards sort of a hybrid process of to get it more and more into alternative process. So what I'm looking for is really big negatives, and for me, there's two ways to do that. I've got an 8x10 camera to finish putting together, but I want to go bigger than that. And for me, the most practical way is to print digitally generated negatives with a regular printer that I have, and then use that to do contact print. And I'm going to probably try and push that farther by combining more than one negative and that kind of thing to get even bigger sizes. But with that in mind, I wanted a really good digital camera for the initial capture. So I do a lot of either a direct digital photograph or a film photograph that I digitize using a digital camera. And I've been struggling with a small APS-C Fuji, which is a great camera, but it does some weird things with detail and color sometimes, and I'm run into trouble with that. So this camera that I have now is still a Fuji, but it uses a regular CMOS sensor. So I don't have any of the strange stuff that happens in Lightroom and Photoshop.
With the
deal with
the X-Trans.
Yeah, the X-Trans makes the most beautiful, straight digital images, but you do get into trouble sometimes with color and detail work using that software. Works fine with other software, but I'm sort of stuck in Adobe world, so I'm going to stick with it. Anyway, this thing also has, the digital camera has a large sensor that's closer to square, and so it opens up another direction I want to go, which is stitching images. And one problem with stitching is that if you've got a fixed lens and you're sliding the camera body, digital camera body, across that frame, as you get towards the edges, the oblique angles start to get eclipsed by the size of the interior of the camera you're using to photograph the image. But a much bigger, wider sensor.
You're talking about using the camera as a shift stitch on the back of another camera, on the back of like a 4x5, right?
Exactly, right.
Yeah.
And you're limited with the small, narrow APS-C throat, but with this big, wide, medium format throat, which also has a very short flange back distance, and it also is designed so that you could crop it down to the full frame size in camera. It means that you can do much wider, freer shift stitching with it. And so I'm working then to build one of the first projects is a sliding back camera designed to make it fast for this process with a short flange back distance so I can use wider lenses. So basically I'm going to put a bellows right on the front of this digital camera with a sliding back setup and an interchangeable lens board arrangement. So that I can create these big files to make these big negatives to do direct contact printing. And I'm really attracted to that. I love the way it looks. I really like the idea of really large negatives. So that's a process that I'm working on. But I can still use the film cameras to make the initial image as well. The point is that it all goes through this point where I digitize it to create the big negatives in the middle, and then back to an analog process for making a print. And that's just something that really, really appeals to me. I've wanted to do it for a long time, and so I'm sort of trying to get rid of some distractions and focus more on doing that work as my main next goal. So it breaks into several parts. I have cameras that I picked up for bargain prices or were given to me that need to be restored. And the other thing is some builds that I have in progress where I've got all the parts and I just have to assemble them and make some connectors to make it all work. So I guess sort of like catch up. I guess I want to spend the next year catching up with all the ideas I've had and all the bits and pieces I put together and actually create this kind of workflow where I go from my favorite ways to take pictures into a really large negative for contact printing. If that makes sense.
Sounds exciting. What you're going to contact print these? Are you going to contact print them using traditional printing paper, black and white printing paper?
Yes, but I also want to get into alternative process where I create my own emulsion, various different ways of doing that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I even have a kit of what is it? Light in a box.
Liquid light.
Liquid. There we go.
That's a good place to start. And there are all sorts. I've got many books of recipes, a few that I particularly want to try. So
cool.
That's the next thing.
Cool. Are you? I know where you live, so cyanotypes would be challenging. But are you, thinking about getting an UV lamp and maybe doing some of those? Or
well, we have plenty of bright days, but UV lamps are a good idea as well. I'm interested in trying cyanotype. I don't actually care for the blue color, but if you bleach them and stain them with something like tea, you can get lovely browns. So that's one.
I actually like the blue, and I've done them outside, and I really one of the things that I like about them is the quality of paper that you can use. I mean, this is I'm holding up a cyanotype, and of course I'm in black and white. Let me go back to color, and it is a blue cast cyanotype. Okay, it goes that way.
Yeah, so there's so many different methods of creating your own emulsion on a piece of lovely paper that there's a lot to try.
But again, what I love about it is the ability to use paper that is it's not RC, so it's not a piece of plastic that sits on top of the fiber paper, and the fiber can come through and So
and now the other thing I'd like to do is create basically make posters. So make affordable large prints, and the smart way to do that is to create the right digital file and send it off to some factory somewhere that cranks them out. So that's another direction to go with all of this. But having a really good way to digitize art essentially is a central part of it.
Do you have a large format inkjet printer by any chance?
I have a pretty big one. I think it's 19-inch by 13. And I have mixed feelings about it. I can make images I like with it, but I'm never completely happy. But I think as a way to generate large negatives, it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, I have access to a 42-inch roll paper Epson P800 P8000. And I just think the quality that comes off those things is amazing. It's more than you really want to have hanging around your house printer wise, but
but there's plenty of people you can slip up some money to, and they'll print it for you, so you don't have to own and maintain the technology yourself.
Right, absolutely. One of the things I just did an art show that was at my school. It was a faculty art show. And I had my work printed by Shutterfly. And Shutterfly uses Fuji, what is it, crystal, whatever. It uses light sensitive photographic, traditional color photographic paper that is exposed to light. So it's essentially a photograph. It does have a digital component in between. And there are lots of people for whom that is sacrilege. But I will tell you, after working in the darkroom for the last year and then giving away my enlarger, I did that because I am not good at printing in the darkroom. So it may be sacrilege, but it is the way I get my prints. So I don't have any problem with doing sending them off, having a digital step. I think that works really well. I love a photograph in my hand, but that doesn't mean that I'm good at creating that final photograph. So,
and I really like working in color, and that adds just ridiculous amount of complication and chemistry if you're trying to do it all yourself.
Yep. I still have that RA4 kit for whichever one of you wants it. But maybe I'll bring it out for the great Seattle Summit of Homemade Camera Seattle Summit. That
would be really, really great if you guys can come out here. Yeah.
Yeah, for 2025. I'm ready.
Okay, should we wrap this thing up?
Yeah. I'm good. I've said my piece. Nick, you said what you. Nick's in a dark room that has got progressively lighter.
Yeah, well, so yeah, this
glare.
terrible cheap webcam I have was just making horrible color, and I just quickly taped a filter over it to solve that problem.
Yeah. Here, let me do this.
Yeah, I should get a different arrangement. This thing it's ugly.
Yeah.
I've got some gels. Maybe I'll play with those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should we thank Robbie here? We can keep talking, but I think we have.
No, I'm playing with my camera. I'm playing with my camera.
People
settings.
don't need to listen to us play with
Okay.
cameras.
Yeah. So if you want to get a hold of us, you can get a hold of us. Nick at homemadecamera.com, Graham at homemadecamera.com, Ethan is Cameradactyl at, or is it Ethan at
Cameradactyl.com and also
Ethan at Cameradactyl.com or
at Cameradactyl
or any of the other ones. We want to thank, who do we want? Is there anybody let's just, Matt Beckberger. Congratulations on another successful Kickstarter. I've been trying to buy stock in Matt Beckberger. He's killing it. I am really looking forward to see what his next project is and his next product is. Anything else? Any shout outs you guys have? Nick, anybody?
No, not right at the moment.
Okay. Ethan? No. My own badass self. Okay. I want to shout out to Ethan. I want to shout out to Nick. Let's say thanks to Robbie Cribbs of soundtrapstudios.com. He's the one who composed and recorded and allows us to use our theme music each time we do a podcast. So thanks, Robbie.
Thanks, Robbie.
Okay, and I'm going to stop the